Hello and welcome. My name is Emily Prieto, and I'm the co-host of the Seeds of Tao podcast alongside my husband, Joshua Prieto. We're also the co-owners of the Seeds of Tao education platform, an incubator for regenerative entrepreneurs. If you're new to the podcast, this is a podcast for impact entrepreneurs creating regenerative enterprises. We often get asked what exactly a regenerative enterprise or impact entrepreneur is. So if you're wondering, a regenerative enterprise builds triple bottom line profits through the practice of ethics and principles that lead to a more inclusive, fair, and balanced economy. Impact entrepreneurs, or regenpreneurs, as we sometimes like to call them, are those willing and able to take on the financial and personal risks of starting and building regenerative enterprises. You'll get to know exactly what all that means as you join us for this and future episodes, but know that we welcome everyone to join us as we work to build regenerative economies together. That's exactly why we are here doing what we do at Seeds of Tao. Our mission is to help establish regenerative economies in every bioregion by serving individual regenpreneurs like yourself. In this podcast, you'll hear the startup stories in all their glory from impact entrepreneurs all over the globe. You'll learn and grow the skills of building a regenerative enterprise from your peers, mentors, and leaders. Finally, we'll get to know each other as you engage in the podcast and join the wonderful Regenerative Business Economies Network, aka RegenBen, an open community where peers, colleagues, funders, allies, and supporters of regenpreneurs come together to build and the regenerative economies of the future. Join us every month for a wonderful episode as we collectively move beyond sustainability and into our regenerative future. It all starts now.
Welcome to the Seeds of Tao podcast. I have Erik Ohlsen on the air with me today, and we get to explore his journey as a regenerative entrepreneur and someone that's been doing regenerative design for a really long while. Erik, how are you doing today?
I'm doing great. It's a high summer here and fruits are falling off the trees, and I'm so happy. Thank you so much for inviting me for this conversation.
It's great to have you. We've gotten a chance to have some good conversation before, but for the audience, let's try to help them to get to know you a little bit better now. What got you up this morning? Give us a little bit of a day in the life of you, and share a little bit more about just your day today.
So we live on a 1-acre homestead, which has about a 9-year-old food forest. And this morning it was the Yosta berries, harvesting them this week to make jam. Also, we have a family of foxes living on the site. We're one of the few landscapes that don't have dogs. And so the foxes love the fruit and the gophers here. So checking on one of the kits, there's only one kit left from the litter, and it's been getting into all kinds of trouble. So this morning it's like, check the fox kit, check the Yosta berries, check the figs. Figs are coming on, and it's a warm day today. So making sure everybody's got water and just really, enjoying the high summer. The apples are coming on. So it's kind of a morning check on the homestead.
Cool. Yeah. It sounds like a beautiful landscape and a good time to be able to be out and about as you're in the kind of high summer. For us, we are in starting rainy season, so a lot of times it's super rainy. We don't get to go. Well, you can go hang out in the rain. It's not really cold rain by any means. But yeah, we kind of stay indoors while you guys are starting to get outdoors. So a little bit of a comparison of time and place and where we're at right now. So share more about your work. Let's get to know the work that you do and what gets you excited to do the work that you do. And we'll start the conversation that way.
Great. Well, I've been doing permaculture and regenerative design since I was 19. And initially it was driven by a response to industrial agriculture, such like genetic engineered seeds and industrial takeover of agricultural landscapes and such. And that really got me going at a young age. And still, even today, 25 years later, looking out upon the world, seeing the ecological collapse and challenges with our industrial economy, And knowing in my heart, in my bones, and in my experience on the land that we have tremendous solutions to approach so many of these problems that we face in the world. It's really the belief in the earth, the wisdom of the earth, the belief in the ability for people to take action. Like, that's what drives me. That's what gets me going every day, to shift the narrative, the story around how we respond to climate change, how we respond to ecological collapse, and that we are not powerless. That's what drives me, and gets me going. And so through that process, working with clients through my professional design company, Permaculture Artisans, or it's working with students who are developing these skills for themselves and bringing them to their communities. And then, of course, the landscape itself and all of the living organisms that are there that we interact with every day. I generate so much hope and energy from that.
Yeah, I think that's awesome that you've been able to keep that energy for so many years. Sometimes we get a little discouraged through that process, but that same energy that kind of led you into what you're doing still carries through today. So that's great to hear. Tell us about the work that you're doing, now, and then we're gonna get into your story. But I really want to understand, where you're at in time and place for the work that you're doing currently.
Absolutely. So I run my company, Permaculture Artisans. So we're a professional design, installation, and maintenance company. So we've got 3 different departments that serve clients. We serve businesses, schools, nonprofit organizations, cities, and private landowners. And we work, on all scales, from small little suburban yards to multi-100-acre projects. And but it's so wonderful to get to engage with people in this way, because we live in this world of like private property ownership, which is a whole other conversation to have. But it's what we have now. It's the situation we're in now. And so folks will become stewards of landscape. And even though permaculture design and regenerative agriculture have gained so much steam in the mainstream over the last few years, and even though all of this work is really rooted in ancient indigenous wisdom that's been applied across the globe for millennia, we still are in a time where folks don't really know how to approach landscape, don't really know how to approach farming in a way that honors all life, in a way that sequesters carbon, catches and harvests water, grows abundant food all through the seasons. So myself and my team, we get to be ambassadors for this kind of work. We get to inspire and educate clients and educate community, and then engage in the design process. So that's a lot of the work I get to do. And I'm just coming off writing my book, The Regenerative Landscaper, which is coming out August 22nd. And so I took 3 years to write that book, mm-hmm. and really drop into the process. And that has been so difficult and also so wonderful. And since we finished editing and the book went to print this spring, now I've been back to working with clients. So it's been an interesting shift just recently.
Oh yeah, I'm sure.
To move from that to this. But then the clients, people are that ecological consciousness, that regenerative, the inspiration to do good by the earth. It is reaching wider and wider. The impact that folks like you and myself and all the folks you have on your podcast have, in the world, it is really reaching people. So I have clients that say just bought 60 acres of forest and meadow that's been overgrazed and hasn't been managed correctly. And so now we get to be in that driver's seat, nudging them in the right direction on all things regenerative. One of my favorite things recently that I've been chatting with folks about, and I want to mention it here, is this idea of the regenerative gradient. I think it's a really wonderful way to initiate a conversation with a client. Because we're folks who are coming into this work, this understanding of how ecological systems are impacted by our actions and economy, they come in at all different levels. And we can't expect people to go from knowing nothing to then having the most ecological lifestyle that's possible, right? There's a transitionary period there. And so what I've been talking to my clients a lot about lately is I ask them, okay, the regenerative gradient 1 to 10, where do you want your project to fall on that? 1 being a landscape that just doesn't use chemicals, but otherwise it's more or less conventional. 10 being a complete ecosystem that is regenerating all of life. So it embraces insects, birds, wildlife. It's multi-stacked, that being a 10. Mm-hmm. And this question is incredible because it really, people don't, they have to search inside themselves. Well, yeah, where am I on this gradient? Because a lot of people want beauty, but the cultural aesthetic around landscape and farm isn't a 10 on the regenerative scale. Like the cultural aesthetic is could be a 5. So I've been working with this concept a lot, and it's really helped unlock in clients self-reflection and an ability to start nudging them farther down that track.
Very cool. I love that concept of a regenerative gradient and applying that to your design clients in a way. I think a lot of times we can also apply that to our businesses as well, right? What is the regenerative gradient that we want our business to be, in terms of the way that we impact and work with our clients, work with our resources that are available to us. I think there's that side of things too, right? And we can't all be purist, and there's no probably level 10 to the point where, because we're all kind of still coping with and dealing with and trying to learn to move away from the industrial systems that we've kind of put in place. And so it's hard, but we can also see that that is something that we can work towards. We can get towards a different, level, so to speak, right? Starting with where we're at. Yeah, I like that. Thank you for sharing that as well.
100%. What you're saying, we can apply that to our businesses. And you're right. I mean, what a 10 on the regenerative scale would be living out in the woods, off the grid, not using any technology. Let's be real. That's just not relevant or applicable for most people on Earth right now. So when we apply permaculture design to this kind of thinking, we also have to think about least change for the greatest effect. Let's read the moment. Where are people at? And then how can we meet them there and then start drawing them in? And so when I talk about this regenerative gradient, it's like never a judgment. It's like, you should be 10. It's not, that's not the approach. It's sort of like, how do you want to invest your time and energy? At what level are we reaching for? And then whatever level that is fine. Let's do that. Totally fine. But one should know, because most people don't know the right questions to ask. Mm-hmm. And so we have to get through, whether it's the business conversation or it's the landscape design conversation, we have to start with, what don't you know to ask, and so if we can expand people's awareness of what's possible, then they might step into a new edge that they didn't even know existed. And so let's give them that opportunity by starting there. And then, like in permaculture, we say work from pattern to detail. So we'll start out at pattern, and then, okay, now we can assess where are we at, and then let's work on the details at that point.
Beautiful. I love it. It gives us a really good perspective of the work that you're doing with your clients to really help them to see how they can step into and maybe learn something a little different. What they know, they don't know, right? Something that they is one part of it, but what they don't know is another whole aspect, right? Yeah. And so as that's a job that you're taking responsibility for as a designer, is to kind of give them that, and that gradient be in there, a piece of that. I kind of want to step just a little bit back in where you're at right now, and kind of you've taken the time to be an educator as well, right? And you've been in that space for some time, writing your book, and now kind of going back into design mode with your clients and with your team. Tell us, maybe if you can, explore with us that side of it for a moment, as you help them to understand, and you're designing. What significance is it? Like what would you say, maybe on a percentage scale? Like what percentage of is it education, and what of it is design? Because I'm sure it's got to be in this kind of process that you're taking people through. A lot of it probably is education versus the design side of it.
Certainly. And of course, it depends on the client and on the people and where they're coming from. So sometimes folks are, super educated, like tons of eco literacy, and then it's helping them just manifest their dreams in ways that are practical with budget and timing and things like that. Education is always a factor. And the very first thing that we do, and something I want to emphasize in all the work, all the regenerative work, whether it's business on the ground or it's social, eco-social enterprises or whatnot, the human element, the human heart, the human emotion and mind is always kind of at the center, because these are folks who are making decisions. We have to think about who are the project stakeholders and the decisions they make. So of course we have to educate them, but step one is assess. Listen, observe. So the first thing I will do, say with a client or student, is take time to learn about them, who they are, what are their values, what gets them up in the morning, like that great question that you asked me and a lot of the folks that are on here, to understand that and have that bit of assessment. It gives me some bearing in the conversation, because the topics of regenerative design, permaculture, regenerative agriculture, these are so wide, they're so huge. They're lifetimes of knowledge that one can dive into, generations really that we tap into. And so we want to read the client first, because I wouldn't want to overwhelm somebody to a point where they start questioning their own choices and their own life. And if we go too far, too fast, yes, be a real turnoff too. And they, oh gosh, I want to go with someone that's not pushing my edges so much, because I'm not ready to go there yet. So over the years, I've learned, in my early 20s, I didn't care about that. I'll push people to their edge like one, right? More coming from that grief and rage as a more activist side approach. But these days, it's a more heartfelt approach to learn about people, understand what motivates them, understand what their values are, and then lift off from there in terms of the kinds of education that they need. Really custom the conversation, custom the approach to each person, each individual, each community, so that it's relevant for them, so that they stay in the game, that they stay inspired, they stay feeling empowered, and that they can actually take that next step towards regeneration rather than shutting them off, which I've just seen happen so many times. So we start there. And then at that point, education becomes a really huge part. I would say it's ongoing. So it might start off a little bit less at first, because it's so much about listening and observation at the beginning. So it's more about what we receive from them, what we receive from the land. And then as we move into the middle of the process and later part of the process, then we're getting into maybe about 50% of the time we want to educate. Every time that we're presenting a plan is an opportunity to educate. Every time we're walking on the landscape with somebody is an opportunity. And again, like we said, people don't know what they don't know. So, so sometimes people will make these suggestions of things, and I just cringe, but I don't want to be too cringy in front of them. So it's a delicate balance how to bring education into these relationships.
Let's take a moment for a brief promotional break and talk about the state of our world. There are famines, floods, and fires in our backyards, a global recession affecting our economies, and war and conflict tearing down our relationships with one another. You see it in the news, feel it in your wallet, and talk about it in your social networks. It's hard to think that it doesn't affect you in your personal life and bring you down in your work. Except you want to regenerate our lands, turn our economies into circular ones, and do it in collaboration and community with others. How are you supposed to do that when it seems like everyone's working against you? You're an entrepreneur and you have a business that's going to help us solve these problems and bring these solutions? You're telling me you're going to change people's minds and raise capital for your cause and bring in triple bottom line profits? You must be an optimist, a dreamer, or completely out of touch. Who's going to buy your products or services, take you up on that offer, or help you fund your do-good business? We will. Who are we? We are the Regenerative Business Economies Network, a connected group of impact entrepreneurs, peers, colleagues, funders, allies, and supporters of regenerative enterprise building. Together, we take on the financial and personal risks of building regenerative enterprises. It's all of us together that creates the change we want to see. We must believe in each other and the work we've devoted ourselves to. If you want to be supported and also lend support to impact entrepreneurs like yourself, follow the promotional link in the podcast description or head over to seedsofdao.com and click on Join the Community. With that, let's get back to the episode.
Yeah, I think that's a great concept to bring towards those that are educators as well. That if you're educating, you have to play the edge and help people to grow into new spaces. But a lot of that is being able to understand and recognize who you're teaching so that you don't run them into the ground and, make them feel like they can't learn or feel like they're not comfortable in the space because that's a part of learning, is to be comfortable in learning something new. And that's a very vulnerable place for someone to be in. Right. And so I totally get that. And as someone that's working with clients, right, that's a huge skill to learn, to be able to help people, challenge them into new thinking of new ways, but also be able to do it in a way that's loving and kind and respectful and really does come from a place of understanding, right? So it seems like this has been years in the making to be designing at this level and to develop your process. And I'm sure you've learned stuff along the way. Let's now kind of take it into storytelling mode. I would love to hear, because it's been you started off really young in permaculture design. Tell us what got you into this work, right? Start us from the beginning. Let's hear it.
Okay, great. Well, first let's get clear. I was never much of an academic person, which I'm curious if that's a story a lot of the entrepreneurs you speak with, if that's a story of some of them. But for me, academics in school wasn't something that wasn't like that. It didn't come easy to me. I just didn't feed my passion for what I wanted to how I wanted to interact with the world. And the way I wanted to interact with the world when I was a teenager was to be in nature, to be at the beach, to be up in the forest, to be on a mountain. And so I just barely graduated high school, and coming out of just barely graduating high school, like I knew I don't want to go to college. For me, that wasn't the path that I wanted. So then what are you going to do? I mean, my dad was a math professor and my grandparents were teachers. So there's a lot of pressure to get a higher education.
I'm sure.
In life, right? And my mom was really supportive, though. She saw some little spark in my eye that, maybe he has something different. And so when I was around 18, my good friend who was in a college program, he had a big project he was doing. He had to create a world-changing project. And we were all up one night like partying all night long and brainstorming about, oh, what could we do that's like life changing. And we started to learn about the Terminator seed technology that the company Monsanto had been creating. And this is genetically engineered seed that when the pollen gets released out into that, when the pollen is sterile, so these plants can't produce fertile seed. So that means farmers would have to go buy that seed every single year from the company. But if that pollen got out into the natural world, it could be catastrophic, ecological catastrophe. So we came up with this idea. What if we gave seed gardens away to our community for free? Because we were idealistic in a gift economy sort of approach. And so we started an organization called Planting Earth Activation in 1999. And we organized these massive front yard plantings in neighborhoods. We would take over a neighborhood, maybe do 8 to 10 front yard plantings all in one weekend, organize tons of volunteers, and then get everything donated: compost, mulch, plants, seeds. And these were amazing cultural events. You'd have 50, 60, 70 people come out, and all the neighbors working together, building each other's gardens, getting to know each other, having a big potlucks. We'd have roving musicians going from garden to garden, playing music, serenading. Sometimes we'd have dance performances in the street. We'd even shut the street down and dump compost and mulch in different parts of the neighborhood. And at the end of the day, boom, there's 8 to 10 brand new ecological gardens planted with heirloom open pollinated plants and seeds. And then our exchange for all this work with these folks who were receiving these gardens was 25% of the harvest goes to save seed. So we're going to save seed at 25% of the harvest and create a seed bank safety net for our community as a way to create resiliency. So here we are, 18, 19, 20-year-olds organizing this. Youngsters creating this nonprofit, getting donations, and it was life-changing, and it changed the complexion of our whole town. I mean, changed the complexion of Northern California in some ways. This concept went to different communities, and we impacted various communities with this approach. We planted over 200 gardens in 2 years, and through that process, attracted mentors, attracted elders who said, like, who are these young people doing this work? Whoa, I want to meet them. So Penny Livingston, she's an internationally renowned elder in permaculture. Brock Dolman, they were two of my early mentors. Brock Dolman from the Occidental Arts and Ecology Center. And, Penny kind of took me under her wing and started to apprentice me with permaculture design. And after a couple of years of this process of doing our nonprofit and getting mentored by Penny and Brock and others, Penny invited me out to my very first professional permaculture installation, which was on, I don't know how big the property was, maybe like 40 acres. It was the middle of summer. It was 106 degrees out. So bring all your friends. And actually, I remember having this conversation with her the night before. She said, okay, well, you're going to show up, and there's this place where the trencher couldn't dig the trench because it's too rocky. Do you think you can do it by hand? And, young, idealistic, full of energy. Yeah, like screw the machines. Of course, we'll dig every trench by hand. No problem. So we go out to this project, and we're in this trench, 106 degrees. I mean, it's absolutely miserable conditions, but I just loved it. And this project was fruit tree orchards and berry patches and organic grapes and massive water harvesting systems on a slope and water harvesting ponds. And it makes everything that I would ever dream of a resilient ecological farm could be was represented here on this project. And here I'm getting paid to be here to do that work. And that really sparked something in me. Wow, we can be here making a living, healing the land, growing, creating resources for our community. So that's really how it started for me. But then I was definitely holding a lot of grief around the world, around world trade agreements, around war, around poverty, that this is, I mean, I still hold grief. I mean, well, how can you not, really? And so I got very involved in activist movements, starting in 1989. I was at the Seattle WTO when the World Trade Organization met in Seattle. And that was my first large sort of mobilization of, civic society coming and shutting down a big meeting and engaging with, police and all of that. It was very intense. It was very life-changing. I had a moment where I looked around and I saw every type of person, age, race, people in business suits and like punks with like pink mohawks, arm in arm together. That hit something in me that about what we were up against and the work that was needed. And so I spent probably from about 1999 to about 2004, I was involved in different mobilizations around the world. The World Trade Organization, when they met in Mexico, when the biotech industry met in Sacramento, various other ones all over the place. And one of the things that we did in those years was we wanted to highlight not just what's wrong, so not just how terrible World Trade Organization is, or the G8, the Global 8 when they meet. We went to those events too, but we wanted to bring the solutions that permaculture and regenerative design offer. Okay, yes, they want to control the seeds of the world, the WTO. They want to control the seeds of the world, but we're all seed farmers. We know how to grow seeds. We know how to collect seeds. Screw those power structures. Let's just organize horizontally across community and start doing the work without any of those governments and corporate overlords. So I did that work a lot. We formed an organization called the Green Bloc, and so there's another group called the Black Bloc, which often shuts down roads and is very direct with their actions. And so we chose to do direct action by guerrilla gardening. We would get in and plant gardens and open lots. We one time, when the biotech industry met in Sacramento, California, there was an old community garden that had been shut down. It was the largest community garden in Sacramento. 30% of the oxygen for the city of Sacramento came from this community garden. 50 different families and communities were all involved, and the city had shut it down, sold it off. It was going to get built into condos. Right around the same time that was happening, the biotech industry was having a massive global meeting of 180 countries in Sacramento to talk about genetically engineered seeds and how they're going to, feed the world and all this. So we organized this mobilization where we took over the closed community garden, knocked the fences down, opened up the gates, and invited the community. Let's go. We started replanting the garden and digging water harvesting systems in there. And as part of that mobilization, we made a bunch of seed balls, and our thing was, we're going to seed ball all these open lots and discuss how we, how organic seeds are a solution to these, genetic engineered seeds. So we had this seed ball making workshop where I would lead this workshop. We're making all these seed balls up because we're going to cast organic seeds all over the town. And unbeknownst to us, undercover cops were watching what we were doing. And so the next morning, we put all the seed balls out on this cardboard to dry. So they're like little clay balls covered in seeds, right? We put them all out on this cardboard to dry. And the next morning, I get a call, 6 a.m. Erik, you got to get down here. The cops have showed up and they're arresting the seed balls. Like, what are you talking about? Arresting the seed balls? This is absolutely ridiculous. So head down, and sure enough, 20 cops and paddy wagons showed up. They weren't there for anything but to confiscate all of our seed balls, stole them, took them away. And we were like, this is crazy. But using some of our Aikido politics and messaging, we're going to have a press conference about how open pollinated heirloom organic seeds that were meant for the community were just stolen as a way to protect, the biotech industry. So we held our press conference, and then the police held a press conference, and they took our seed balls in front of primetime news, and they shot them with wrist rockets at Styrofoam to show like that they were projectile weapons. That's what they said. What? So I know that's I know it's a little bit of a tangent story, but you hear people doing seed balls and they call them seed bombs and such. And, I always like to tell that it kind of precedes this whole, this newer phase of the seed ball movement that like they became truly subversive back then in 2003 during the biotech. So these are the kinds of actions I took. This is the kind of stuff I did a lot in the early 2000s. And then something really intense happened to me, because that's a lot of very intense emotional, mental, physical strain to engage in these kinds of actions, go head to head with police and all of this. And in 2004, I crashed hard. I had a very, very deep burnout. I think I spent like 2 weeks just holed up, couldn't really leave, just like crying a lot, physically in pain, uncomfortable. And about 4 months after that, I got this chronic condition. And this chronic condition made it so that it was impossible for me to go do this activist work. I couldn't travel. I couldn't go to meetings. I could barely get out of my house. And it was a real identity. It was a real experience of casting off an identity, my identity as an activist. And for me at that time in my life, in my early 20s, this was really how I found worth, was doing this activist work. And to not be able to do it because I was having these physical symptoms was just absolutely crushing to me. Crushing. And I didn't know who I was. I didn't know who I could become. And at the same time, I was engaged and about to get married and about to start a family. And all of my financial reciprocity came from my activist work, fundraising and donors and people who would fund me to go do this work in the world. So I didn't know how I was going to get funding to support a growing family. But what I did have was skills in permaculture design and in developing landscapes. Mm-hmm. And so born out of that whole crash and burn on the backside of the intense activism, I realized that I needed to start offering my skills up in exchange for money. And I then, how magic happens, a mentor, Penny Livingston, again, always there to support me, even now. She hooked me up with an old client of hers, which was 1 mile from my house, who wanted to build a lavender farm and a commercial orchard. This became my very first, me leading it, project that I was leading this project. And I went and I did the design, and I was so fortunate that my client was a businesswoman and was really patient because I was learning how to run a business, while running a project for money. So could be kind of sketchy depending on who your client is. She was amazing. And she mentored me through the process. I mean, she also got the most landscape. I mean, she probably got over the years, she probably got $100,000 landscape that would cost like $500,000 to build and install, because I didn't know things like marking up the labor of my employees and things like this that are normal business stuff. I hire my friends and I'm going to pay them $15 an hour and I'm going to charge you $15 an hour. That's how I ran my business first year, this kind of a thing. But after that first year on that first project, something incredible happened. And what happened was that we planted more fruit trees, built more water harvesting systems than in 2 years of nonprofit work. And myself and my community could actually pay our rent, could actually put fuel in our car, could feed our families. And then something clicked in. If we want to heal the earth in a massive way, it has to be done professionally. We have to be able to scale professionally to where we can offer services, because if we don't have an entire economy of people who are trained and able to regenerate landscape, to restore watersheds, to grow food, then where are we going with this? And if you think about people who are living in poverty and people who are don't have the privilege of even say like taking a permaculture design course or doing a lot of things that are that people who have a means can do. Their focus is feed my family. Like that's the number. Survival, feed my family. Those are the number one focus of many people in the world,
Right.
especially on the poverty level. And so I started to realize that, one, we can't have regenerative design, landscaping, farming be a hobby. It has to be something more than that. And if we want to bring this to folks who don't have the privilege of paying for a permaculture course or doing this training or that training, who are working dropping out of high school and going straight into the workforce, then we need an economy that is training and employing folks with living wages, with a beautiful culture of work culture, to gain these skills, do this work, and care for their families that way. So that first project was a start for me. That was in 2005, and that was the beginning of my company, Permaculture Artisans. It's now been around, it's 18 years now that we've been in business. We've grown to about 30 employees. We're a bicultural community. We speak Spanish, we speak English. We our company, Permaculture Artisans, not only do we provide for the earth, we train everybody who comes onto our team, but also through all of our community, our staff community, this work is providing for like over 100 people, feeding families. And that concept of we can go out there and professionally offer services that sequester carbon, catch water, enhance habitat, support endangered species, grow food for community, reduce other people's carbon footprints, manage climate, that we can do all of that work and then pay the people who do that work a living wage, healthcare benefits, retirement benefits, paid vacations. That to me is the power of what we're doing in the power of work.
That's the passion you have for it is tremendous. Like, and I'm catching that as well. But the absolute need and necessity for that is really what I'm shaking my head vigorously for, right? Like, in so many ways, the economy needs to be surrounded in that right there, right? And it's one of the reasons why, we're focusing on entrepreneurs here, right? Because entrepreneurs can take on the risk to make that happen, right? And they're passionate about it. They want to see that succeed, and I see that fire, and I see it take action. And we need more and more of that, right? And as well as people that are willing to switch careers, to do a little pivot, to be pioneering an industry that essentially, and an economy, a regenerative economy that can really help us to thrive in so many ways that we don't necessarily look at. We look at these high tech situations, and we think technology is the savior of everything, and there's some great benefits that we get from technology. But the natural systems, that's the technology that's just going to last forever. And there's no way that we can top that, right? So why haven't we figured this out before? And I think we have. The only problem is we haven't devoted ourselves to enough of us have devoted ourselves to really making that a part of our economy and a part of our lives. And really, that's what I love about it. It's not just a job at this point. It's livelihood. It's blending what our life is, what our passion is, and what our work is, and all together, right? Family. Everything just kind of melds into one, and really that's what it is. We're all connected, and we can share that connection even further when we start to apply these types of economic work together. How can we redesign? And a lot of the work isn't necessarily. We don't need any more new widgets and stuff. It's design work, right? It's how do we design our communities? How do we design our our lives and so forth, right? To so that we can make those changes, because it's really more the people problem. Nature doesn't really have the problem there. It's the people problem that we're having, and that's a design. How do we design ourselves into better situations?
Totally. 100% agree with you. I mean, it's really, really powerful stuff. And part of that people aspect, why I brought that up at the beginning too, really assessing the people first, and so that we can meet them, from the heart and with the right information and the right words and the right empowerment. And one of the challenges that we've been facing, because I've been doing this work 25 years now, and one of the challenges that still comes up, especially in the trades, and you think about the trades for a minute, a lot of trades, whether it's construction, plumbing, electrical, landscape, farming, we have a culture of, get it done. You've got a lot of money that moves through the trades. I mean, last time I checked a couple of years ago, the landscape industry in the United States was over $80 billion a year, over $400 billion a year in agriculture, just in the United States. So these are massive, massive industries. Construction industries way up there in the many, many billions. Mm-hmm. And one of our biggest and greatest challenges is that the conventional way of doing things, whether it be landscape, construction, energy, whatever it be, this conventional way is like so outdated from an ecological perspective. But it's really hard to change how people do things, because you get told, from your dad or whatnot, or your mentor, this is how you do this, and this is why you do it. And so you get that, okay, that's the way to do it. Now, for years, I've been battling engineers and contractors because we'll go out there and put these contour water harvesting systems in, and then a rainstorm will come and they'll fill up with water, right, to infiltrate, because we're building the water lens, we're reducing erosion, we're catching storm surge. And for years I had these engineers and contractors just berating me. You're never supposed to allow water to stand, because of mosquitoes and this and that. And where I live, it's not, the water actually infiltrates within a day in almost every case because of our soil type. So mosquitoes are like absolutely not the issue here. But they're all constantly berating you. There's this consciousness about drain it away. And that's like is pervasive through the entire construction industry, is drain water away. This relationship with water is completely broken and completely backwards, and not based on any sort of ecological consciousness. So when we come in, when we do these catchment systems, it's like, and in my 20s, I'm still young and I don't quite have the confidence. Like I know what my mentors have taught me, I know what I've learned, but I didn't stand in my power. It's hard to stand in my power against some old construction guy who's yelling at me because of a rain garden that I put in. But that's changed in my area, but not in other places. Mm-hmm. And so this is part of our challenge, is that we have to come in with confidence. We have to come in with science. We have to come in with precedence when we're pushing against industry standards and moving them back towards an ecological rate, because that's how people did it forever. And that now we're gonna 100 years, 150 years of this really terrible way of doing things. So this is one of our challenges with educating a whole new generation and changing the industry, is that the industry standards are absolutely outdated, and it's a powerful force to go against, powerful force. And so we have to persevere, and we need to come through, and it's slowly changing. I mean, it's happening. We've got the upper hand. We're moving into having the upper hand in that transition of industry, but it can definitely be a battle.
Yeah. Well, and so that just brings up a whole new side of the work that you're trying to do as well, because you're fighting against these long held and deeply, there's a lot of power behind it, and these deeply held cultural forces and flows, right? And we're trying to work with or work against, or they're working against us, right? And so the other part of it is negotiation skills and all of these other pieces, right? Just like when we came in the beginning of this, is like, if you come in blazing the same way that he's coming in blazing at you, even though, you got to stand your ground, there's also the side of it of like, if I do the same thing that he's doing, it's only going to throw up things, and they're going to think I'm throwing, like the story that you told us about the seeds, like they think I'm going to throw actual bombs instead of, what a seed bomb truly is, and it's so interesting to see that we have these cases. It really does show that, I think a lot of us are starting to recognize within permaculture that social permaculture is probably one of the greatest things that is needed in our society. Now that we understand the science, like we've never been more aware, I think, right? The challenge is now with that knowledge, we have to be able to do something with it. And the problem that exists is us being able to talk with others, us being able to kind of design the social structures so that we can open up those conversations, right? And allow for those conversations to happen instead of the combativeness that can often happen in those spaces. It's so, I know we're at we're getting towards the end of the conversation. I think there's a lot that we can explore there. But I think I want to bring this to you now, and maybe this is a part of the lessons that you've learned, or the pieces that you would hope for the listeners here that are entrepreneurs, right? Working towards a more regenerative economy. They carry, in so many ways, a very diverse background of what they're working on, how they're working on it, who they are, where they're from. There's a lot of diversity in this movement of regeneration, permaculture, and those entrepreneurs that are taking it, right? Taking up the mantle for it. What would you hope for your story? And it's been a really fun story to hear. What would you hope for those entrepreneurs to take from your story and the journey that you've taken?
Well, first off, to feel seen, because I think that a lot of folks who have gotten to that entrepreneurial have, stories about, trial and error and failure and working for family, and how do we navigate this world to bring this good work about. So first off, to feel seen, but also to know that we're out here literally transforming global industry towards regeneration, and that you're not alone, that we are allies, we are colleagues, that we can build off each other's work, that we can fuel each other's work, and just to not give up, really not to give up. In permaculture, we say the problem is an opportunity, and that has really served me a lot in my life. Every time I've hit one of those problem moments, it's okay, well, the pivot isn't just to pivot away from the problem, it's actually to come into deeper relationship. And that mental shift, that problems are opportunities to create more dynamic relationship, whether it's company-wide or it's inner relationship or it's family or it's landscape, whatever the context of that is. That has been one of the most powerful practices over the years that has allowed you to keep going, because, let's be real, we're going to continually mess up. Things are going to happen. Burnout is going to take place. Endeavors are going to fail. And we are at a time in the world and in the importance of this work that we can't lose anybody to those failures and those burnouts. Like we need everybody to be able to get back up, find the new way forward, and continue to do that work and continue to nourish forward. And this is a big reason why I wrote my book, The Regenerative Landscaper. It is a 500-page authority on regenerative design with step-by-step, with deep regenerative principles, with honoring indigenous roots, with a very practical way of approaching how we bring this work to the world, not just theory and excitement, but the things that actually make stuff happen, like understanding budgets, understanding sequencing a project, understanding how to talk to somebody, like we were saying before. How do you approach the communication and the education and the inspiration and the empowerment? And so all of that is in the book through all these experiences and the pitfalls, and bringing that now we can, what I'm offering here in the book is really a recipe to take permaculture, regenerative agriculture into a mainstream, powerful, empowered, science-backed approach that can lift up this regenerative economy.
That's so powerful, so needed in this specific point where we're at right now, to be able to not get beaten down, because there's so much coming at us at so many levels, right? And to see when we get through those pieces that are really a struggle point, a challenge, or whatever, to take those moments and to really connect. I think that's a huge lesson for us as entrepreneurs. And instead of retreating to actually, go talk to you, Erik, go talk to another leader, a mentor, a elder in our community, to be able to solve these challenges, right? It should be a moment for us to reach out, right? And I love that.
Yes.
So as we have listened to your story, and as we go out and we bump into our own challenges, how can we reach out? How can we stay in touch with you? How can we learn from you? Obviously, you have the book out, so it's coming out. We're going to be, I think this podcast is going to be really close to the timing, I think is what we've planned for this. So if you're listening to this right now, where can we go to learn more about your book and to get a hold of it and to get in touch with you?
So my book is The Regenerative Landscaper by Erik Ohlsen, and it's available at every book outlet. It's published by Synergetic Press, so you could get it straight from them or wherever your preference is. And check out my website, Erik Ohlsen, ERIK, Ohlsen, OHLSEN.com, erikolsen.com. And you can, there I've got coaching services. I do business to business coaching all the time. People who want to actually create their own professional regenerative design businesses. It's like, I've been there. I've been through all the trials and tribulations. And so I can be available to folks in that way. You can connect to me there. I also have an online course, sort of self-paced online course called the Eco Landscape Mastery Program. That's literally built. It's over 100 hours of class content, literally built to teach people how to grow or create their own professional ecological landscape company. Because that's how much, it's like, we got to professionalize this. Let's get out there. Let's get people to develop their livelihood. And I have stories from people all over the world. Like every now and then somebody will send me a message. I took your course and check out what I did. And like, there was this man in Mexico a few months ago, sent me all his designs and his website, his logo. And he said, I'm now 100% doing this for my livelihood, feeding my family.
Yes.
My business is growing quickly. And I'm like crying over here reading this. like, oh my gosh. And so there's a number of these stories that keep coming in. So that's what that course is about. That's how you can reach me. You can also check out permacultureartisans.com. That's our design contracting company to get a sense of, how have we packaged this? How do we approach this? Who are we as a community? What are our services and such? So those would be some great ways. If folks get the book and check out the book, leaving review would be absolutely incredible. That'd be a great way to support me, but also reaching out to me. How is it serving you? How is it supporting you? I have this idea that the best honoring of this book would be by how many like leaves are like put into the pages and how much like mud is like on the surface. Like I want people to like take the book out and be out in the field, like just mucking through this thing, opening it up with dirty hands and finding what they need there. Go do it.
Yes, I love that. And there's some of those books that I feel like that's what they're all about, right? I have a few of them just in front of me, right? You have Gaia's Gardens, one of my favorites, but then you have the handbook. Oh my goodness,
the Permaculture Manual.
The Permaculture Manual. One that really sparks me is the Wilderness Coyote's Guide, right? For education. Have you run into Coyote's Guide? John Ohlsen's. No. But there's these books that you can really take, and this one I'm excited to get my hands on as well, right? And really just to take it out and be in nature with it is one of those pieces that I love to find, those books, those guides that just kind of help you explore out in the world, that get you out of the house, so to speak, right?
100%. That's how this book is oriented. It's like, go ahead, read a few pages of what you need, and then get out there and like get in it. Go start doing it, and then come back, and the next phase is there, and then go back out there.
Yes, I love it. So if those of you that are listening, go check it out. Of course, we're going to have everything in the show notes. Go check out the website. You can check out the show notes for this episode are going to be on www.seedsofdao.com. We also will have links to Synergetic Press, your publisher, and they're a really great business in themselves, right? So we fully support the authors that come from Synergetic Press, and we really do hope that we see more of this, and we want to have more of this conversation. You and I, Erik, we would love to have you back on. We do master classes. We're in discussion there to possibly do a master class together, and just to really stay in touch and really understand and follow the journey that you've taken. So thanks again, Erik, for joining us today.
Thank you so much. It's been such a pleasure. Let's do it.
All right, everybody. Bye for now. See you later.
Thanks for joining us today. We hope you enjoyed the podcast. It really is a blessing and a pleasure to bring each episode to you. So what'd you think? If you enjoyed this podcast, please leave us a review or follow us on the podcast platform of your choice. Each review really does help us to further the reach of this podcast and move our mission forward to build regenerative economies in every bioregion. If you have a suggestion or feedback for us, please let us know in the open and free Regenerative Business Economies Network, known as RegenBen, which is linked in the description and in the show notes of this episode. RegenBen also has an awesome community request form that allows you to suggest guests, register to be a guest on the podcast, and share your own regenerative entrepreneur startup story, or any other suggestion you may have for the community. Without your feedback and requests, this podcast and community wouldn't be what it is, so please let us know. Now, this may be bye for now, but remember, it doesn't end here. It has only just begun. The regenerative economies of the future start now with you.